relations, and when you create a vortex preference for relationships with someone, you can allow that vortex with them or with any other amount of people, correct?
There are many, many possibilities, probabilities, and even certainties to satisfy your vibrational intent.
Yes. So one of my questions about relationships is that, is there the path of least resistance is sometimes...
That really is the only conversation that is necessary to have relative to the subject of relationships, because it's a path of least resistance thing, because you've already created the relationship. Now it's just a matter of you getting out of the way of it in the precise ways to bring you the relationship that's most active in your vibration. In other words, do you know that we're going to let you talk in a minute. Do you know that the path of least resistance really is the path that you've most practiced? Now think about that. The path of least resistance is the path that you've most practiced, because the path that you've most practiced is the path of your most momentum. And therefore of your most attraction. Can you wrap your thoughts around that? So the question that you want to ask yourself is, am I practicing the path to what I want? Or am I just practicing the path that's the easiest to practice? It's easier in your human environment to find people to complain with you about one thing or another. It's easy to practice complaining because they're everywhere. So it's really easy to practice complaining. And therefore make that path the path of least resistance through which other things to complain about make their way steadily, effectively, and swiftly to you.
Yes.
And isn't law of attraction the ultimate relationship conversation? And isn't path of least resistance, doesn't it just fit right in there in the most wonderful way? So don't just sort of want to make your decisions about what you want and identify it and then say, okay, I'm going to do everything in my power to carve out the path of least resistance to that. Stay with us. You're really going to like this. So if you can fast forward in your mind vibrationally to what it would feel like to be inside this delicious relationship that you want, and you identify what it would feel like to be inside of that relationship. Ooh, what does it feel like to be the object of someone's attention when they're tuned into source energy? Ooh. What does it feel like to be tuned into source energy and holding someone else as my object of attention? What does it feel like to have the energy that creates worlds coursing through us as we cooperatively are moving through life and making decisions together? What does empowerment feel like? What does invincibility feel like? What does that feeling of love and appreciation feel like? What does that feel like? You just keep thinking for it, reaching for it, finding the feeling of it, finding the feeling of it. Now, this is the key point to this leading edge discussion. Once you have identified what it would feel like to be inside that, not virtual, that fleshed out, that filled in, that all the pieces in there where you can see them and hear them and smell them and taste them and touch them. Once you've identified and practiced what that would feel like, now the path of least resistance feels just like that too. Feels just like that. So every time you're worried, you're off the path. Every time you're frustrated, you're off the path. Every time you're lonely, you're off the path. Every time you're happy, you're on the path. Every time you feel invincible, you're on the path. Every time you feel appreciation for anyone or anything, you're on the path. Don't you like that? Don't you like knowing that you could be on a subject that seems completely unrelated to the relationship you want, and you would still be on the path of least resistance to most swiftly rendezvous with that other? Yeah.
So what happens when you're in a relationship with someone and...
Well, you could be right smack dab in the middle of a relationship and still on your path to the relationship you want. Because almost nobody's in a relationship that they want. You're so annoying in all of these ways. This isn't the relationship that I wanted. It's the way it seemed in the very beginning, but you changed. You see, that's really an important thing to understand. The relationship that you want is often with the person you're already with. But you haven't found the path of least resistance. You're on the path of most resistance. You're critical, you're picky, you're moody, You're not choosing your discs in the way you mean to. You're practical. You're hardworking. You're efforting. You've got your nose to the grindstone. You're trying. You're seeking closure on issues. You're clarifying. You're poking it with a stick all the time, trying to squirt a little better out and a little better out and a little better out. You're going about it the hard way in most cases. So the path of least resistance, inside or outside of a relationship, is still what you're looking for. And the way you discover the path of least resistance is by, as often as you can, fast forwarding to what this dream relationship that you want would feel like, and then practicing anything and everything that feels like that until you have established yourself predominantly on that good feeling disc, where you then rendezvous with the characteristics with the person you're with or with another person, but you rendezvous with those. And you see, it's really interesting when you practice it to what you might want to call perfection, and then law of attraction says, yeah, we see you there, and we see that one way over there. Doesn't matter how far away they are, because vibrationally is the only thing that matters. But proximity wise, they're not on your radar because they're somewhere else. But now that you've established this, the universe is going to establish a path of least resistance to bring you right to each other. And since you've practiced it relative to that subject and that subject and that subject and that subject and that subject, when it's standing right before you, you recognize it. Ah, I know you. I remember you. I've been practicing you for 27 minutes.
So what happens if the universe matches you up with someone who's a match to the highest vibration that you've been consistently holding? And that, I guess it's just not up to you whether that person is the person that you're currently in a relationship with or whether that person is someone else.
Well, the only reason that that could be is if the universe has matched you up to something that isn't what you're really reaching for and what you really want, because what's in your vortex is. What's in that high-flying vortex that you've been accumulating and creating and evolving for all of these lifetimes. If what you say has happened, you're not on that disc, you're on one of those other discs. Because the universe is always matching you up with what's predominant with you. And sometimes it's helpful to have something like that happen in order to sharpen your resolve to focus yourself emotionally. That's really what this whole conversation's about. When we're talking about focusing yourself vibrationally, we're talking about focusing yourself emotionally. You just can't leave the emotion out of it. This is the most significant thing that we'd like to say to all of you relative to the subject of relationships. The path of least resistance to the relationship that you want is not on the topic of that relationship. We'll say it again. If you have a relationship that you want, and maybe you've identified the individual, and maybe it's conceptual, the path of least resistance is clearer. The pipes are more open when you're appreciating your walk in nature, or you're enjoying the beauty of your planet, or you are savoring this delicious meal that you are eating, or you are listening to the magnificent music that is turning you inside out, or you have meditated yourself into a place of non-thought. In other words, the path of least resistance isn't on that efforting toward that end that you seek, because that end that you seek has already been established. So your singular work is to open up the path of least resistance, and you do that by doing stuff that feels good to you. So if you heard us right, that means no one should go to work tomorrow. Now, we don't really mean that, but we'd like you to find ways to make your work a path of lesser resistance too. But anything that is causing you to bind up, to clog up, to slow down, to complain, anything that's evoking conversation from you that doesn't feel good to you while you're speaking it, those are indicators that you've got your path of least resistance clogged up with other things. And you don't need to do that. That's the thing that's so interesting. You don't need to do that. We think we've convinced you for the most part that you don't need to do that. Now you've just got to figure out how you're going to spend your day. And if we were standing in your physical shoes, the way we would do it is we'd start it out as best we could. And if we find ourselves falling to a lower vibration, we just laugh about it and say, well, something like, isn't that the way it goes? And I'm in the process of doing a better job of maintaining my frequency there. And maybe in some sense I'm crashing and burning a little bit, but at least I'm doing it consciously, and that's a really good thing. Now, is there anything that I could do right now that would make me feel better right now? And sometimes there is something that you could do right then and now that would make you feel better.
What if it's that you want to be, that it's easier to get in the vortex when you're alone? But then that rocks the boat in terms of the relationship, saying like, you know, I'll call you in.
Well, the fact of it is, if you understand what we've been saying here today, then you could, in your most loving terms, say to your partner, I love you so much that I'm not going to spend any time with you today.
Yes.
Because I'm tuning myself to being my best.
Yeah.
Relative to everything. And now there are other ways of saying that. You put me on lower disc because it's not good for us.
Right.
Or I fly higher when I'm not with you.
Right.
Or when I first met you, it looked like we were going to fly high, but now I've gotten to know you. My mind isn't strong enough to overcome the reality of you. It's easier for me to live a very conditional love with you, because if you would change just these 27 things about yourself, then I could spend more time with you. But since you seem to think that you have the freedom to choose for yourself and you aren't willing to be everything that I need you to be, then I've got more work to do. Or you could say, now you could say all of those things and then don't say any of those things. Don't say any of those things. But you've been thinking a lot of those things, haven't you? Or you could say, it is my powerful intention to be in the highest alignment as I move into our relationship. And you make it easy for me at some times and not so easy at others, but ultimately I don't want to make it about you. I want to make it about me. So I'm just going to tune myself as best I can so we can have the most fun that we can have. And most others would like hearing that from you, because the opposite is what they're usually hearing. You need to do something different than what you're doing so that I can feel better. And believe me, you want me to feel better. That's mostly what people are saying. Where what you want to say is, believe me, you want me to feel better, and I'm taking complete responsibility for me feeling better. And it'll be better for you if just me and me goes off and does that for a little while.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's basically what you're saying.
Excellent.
Yeah.